but again, as soon as all of those things leave the frame, then it's as if it never happened. And so by the end, we have Ardeth Bay saying, "You have earned the respect of our people." Bracket, despite the fact you did the stuff that killed thousands of them.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanty Show's Totally Pretentious.
Where we're always on the wrong side of the river.
No, they weren't. They're just Benny. Oh man, this is going to be a long one, David. It's going to be a long episode. I'm Sean.
I'm David.
I'm Trish.
And on today's show, which was heavily delayed by technical difficulties, sorry everybody, we'll debate the merits of Stephen Sommers' 1999 action-adventure perfection called The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser, a.k.a. America's Sweetheart, Rachel Weisz, a.k.a. Britain's Sweetheart, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo. I'm sorry, are we just going to leave out Kevin O'Connor? Daniel, how dare you, sir? Also features the delightful comedy of Kevin J. O'Connor, among many other wonderful actors. Eric Avari? What? Daniel, you and I are going to have a talk about how to appropriately respect great actors? You bastard. Anyway, it's a remake of... remake. Okay, remake is
heavily remade, reimagined, rescripted.
It is a dramatically interpolated remake of the 1932 Universal Monster classic film directed by Carl Freund. I assume it's Freund and not Freund.
Freund, probably.
Freund? Oh, well, it's more fun to say Freund. Just like my grandma used to say Freud. Anyway, starred Boris Karloff, the Great, the Uncanny, and we each have very, very strong opinions about this particular version, 1999, and so we'll get there in a second.
Before we get into our discussion, a reminder to please share your comments, questions, or suggested topics with us at skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions. If you aren't already, join us live each Friday at 7 Central on Sean's Alphabet Streams Twitch to be a part of our interactive live streaming format, or join us anytime for interaction on our Discord. Finally, please join our Patreon and be part of our exclusive content. It only takes $1 a month, and let others know about how incredibly fabulous we are.
So, I'm just going to let you know, the video is not recording. I give up. So we're just going to make a show that's just audio.
It's a podcast.
Okay.
It's a podcast. I give up.
It's a podcast.
Because I can't. I might actually go bald during this show. I will reverse mummy myself today.
How alarming.
Yeah. But Trish, in all seriousness, to get us on task today, could you give us a brief summary of 1999's American classic, The Mummy?
Okay, Rick, aka the Brendan Fraser, is fighting in a war and tries to take shelter in the city of the dead in Egypt, and things don't go well, but he gets out of there. Later on, Rachel Weisz, a frustrated librarian working in Cairo, is given a present by her brother, who is kind of a loser. He's mostly a drunk, and also stole a map and an object from Rick, Brendan Fraser. That turns out to be the key to an archaeological discovery that Evelyn wants to make so that she will no longer be snubbed as a librarian, but get respect. A mummy who used to be... Well, actually, he is never a mummy. But there's this high priest back in Egypt who fell in love with a priestess who was the fiancée of Seti I, and they got caught, and she got killed, and he got hideously buried alive and eaten by scarabs. Many years later, someone finds the Book of the Dead and read something out loud that they shouldn't have. Anyway, Evelyn, Rick, and Evelyn's brother.
Jonathan. It's Jonathan.
Jonathan, thank you. They all go to try to figure out what the great discovery is associated with the artifact, and inadvertently wake up the evil priest. They and others, some of them get eaten, some of them flee. They go back to Cairo. The mummy, well, he's not a mummy, but the revived priest pursues them. Horrible things happen. He grabs Evelyn and starts taking her back to the city of the dead to make her be the host of the priestess, the dead priestess, that he wants to reincarnate. He is pursued by others. Eventually, Jonathan finds the Book of Life. They find a spell to read it out that puts the mummy, that they try to read to put the mummy, not a mummy, back to rest. The mummy is shoved into a pit or something, a pit of scarabs. Anyway, the mummy is out of the picture, although he says he'll be back, and it's a happy ending. In a very colonialist, exoticist sort of way, but it is so much fun as a movie. A lot of things happen in this movie.
I'm legit confused right now.
Yes, I should have written out a script beforehand, but I didn't, so I'm sorry.
Turns out a lot happens in this movie.
A lot does happen. There's a lot of pretty people doing exciting things, wearing fun costumes, and saying really fun lines. But yeah, I have to admit, I love this despite its colonialism and exoticism. But gosh, it's fun. It
is a great movie. It is perhaps one of the great American movies. Of course, David will have opinions. and David will be measured in his responses because I've had a bad day. And I'm definitely going to milk that to have you be nice to this film. Yeah, so I suppose the first thing I will say is I picked this film obviously to torture David because I know David has strong opinions, although we haven't really talked about them and I'm sure they're going to come up. I obviously love this movie. I have watched it, 50 plus times. When my grandmother had satellite TV on like one of the Stars-like channels, they would just go through a phase where they would just play this movie on like 3 of the channels like simultaneously. So I would watch it a lot, over and over. It is a lot of fun. It has a lot of meaning to me. I'm just frank. I am completely and utterly biased about this film. Even today, I jokingly said, I'm having a bad day. I am actually having a really bad day and I'm really stressed. And I mentioned on Facebook that this movie brought a little bit of like relief from the like knot of stress in my stomach at the moment. It's hard to be objective about this movie when it brings that much joy to your soul. And so I'm biased, David. I don't know what to tell you. I love
and that's
this
fair
movie.
enough. That's the feeling I get from that's the feeling I get from the 1932 film, right?
Okay.
So yeah, fair enough. I can't say, Sean, your feelings are terrible and wrong, and you should be ashamed.
That is fair. You can't. You could try, but then that would make you mean. Yeah.
Well, I also watched the 1932 and the 1959 versions of The Mummy in preparation for this podcast. And I fully endorse David's enthusiastic love of The Mummy 1932. And I don't really need to see The Mummy 1959 ever again.
I do have a great deal of fondness for the 59 version. I think Christopher Lee's physical performance in that is absolutely extraordinary.
Okay.
The colors are gorgeous. It is awkwardly structured. The flashback scene goes on way too long, and positioned where it is halfway through the film just kind of kills the momentum dead. But
I have to respect the production values and the acting in 1959, but I didn't much care for the plot, and the pacing could have been tightened up a lot, even though it's only 90 minutes.
But I would strongly recommend, especially given what the 1999 version turned out to be, is also a viewing of the 1939 film, The Mummy's Hand. So this was Universal's first Mummy film after the 32 one, and instead of a sequel, it was essentially a reboot. What happened here? Well, the Mummy's renamed. He's called Caris. Anxanamun is now Ananka. And the tone of the 39 film is very much what we get in the 99 version. So we have two, jovial heroes and the heroine who joins them, and so there's a lot of kind of fairly humorous knockabout banter. The horror scenes are played straighter than they are in the '99 film, but it is a much kind of more like an adventure movie than the 32 film, which is a very much a tone poem, a mood piece. And then, interestingly, so then the other Mummy films are all direct sequels to The Mummy's Hand, and the follow-up, The Mummy's Tomb, which takes place 25 years later, interestingly, takes a radical sharp turn back into horror. So the movie begins with the heroine from the first film now dead of natural causes,
Oh,
and our heroes from the Mummy's Hand are brutally killed by the mummy partway through, which would have been a hell of a twist for The Mummy Returns if they'd
It would have been.
taken that route.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting when I'm thinking about this film. I have not seen some of the films you've mentioned, David, and by some I mean all of them. I know I need to fix my life, David. I get it. I can feel your judgment just now. But the thing that I was thinking as you were talking about kind of the past and looking at how, to some degree, some of the connections this film has backwards, and then I suspect later we'll talk about how it does not. This made me think about this film and its connection to efforts to like bring back the MonsterVerse today, because we've had
Yeah,
a bunch of different Dracula interpretations that are pretty not necessarily good, all of them, but some of them are very brooding and try to have that very horror sensibility. And while some of them certainly artistically are maybe compelling, it does seem that Universal in particular is not necessarily committed to their classic, literally horror films as horror films today. They all, like even the new Mummy, like the Tom Cruise Mummy, it has moments that is like just pure horror, that aren't like comedic horror, like in this, where you get that kind of crossover where it's scary, but like we got to pull it back a bit because it's still an action movie and needs to be mostly friendly to younger people. The newer one certainly gets a little bit more horrific, but it is still ultimately an action affair. It's a Tom Cruise movie. It's an action movie. And he literally like jumps out of a plane hanging onto a sarcophagus, like, of course. And every time I feel like since this movie they've tried, they can't seem to escape that desire to make an action movie because they want the blockbuster, which I don't know. I don't really want to say it's this film's fault because it's literally decades later that that's happened, but it is very interesting that like this model is basically the model so many of the others do. They just get slightly darker than perhaps this film does.
I would say this film is the reason for that. And Universal's was very explicit when they tried to do the Dark Universe. They said they wanted to do action films, not horror movies, which the result speaks for itself. It was a mismatch of subject matter
tone.
and tone. Yeah. So the Universal only finally had a hit on their hands when they abandoned that and turned the reins over basically to Blumhouse for The Invisible Man. Now, I'm not fond of that film, but it is skillfully done. It went straight up into horror, and that was their hit. Universal desperately wanted an MCU, right, which they tried to do with Dark Universe. Oh, they tried, several abortive attempts, and it didn't work out. Interestingly, the one other cinematic universe which is doing extremely well, in fact, is several times more profitable than the MCU, the Conjuring universe over at Blumhouse, which is straight up horror.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems odd to me. Like this one, it makes sense as an action film. You can make this an action movie because once you just take like the central plot, you can map on another plot. Like, they woke up the
Oh,
mummy.
yeah,
Oopsie boopsies.
it's it's not really a horror movie any more than I'm the Pope.
No, it's really not.
It's an adventure. It's a sort of basically adventure comedy with some set dressing of
Supernaturally
horror.
horror adjacent images. Yeah.
Right,
I
there's
mean, there
scary stuff going on. Nobody wants to get eaten by scarabs alive. Nobody wants to get, swallowed up by a dust cloud or have their organs stolen to revive a mummy. But
That
they don't
CGI
really
mum. Oh, sorry.
dwell on that. It's more, here are problems to solve and avoid. You don't get so much of the creeping sense of dread that I feel is a big part of horror. It's more like go, 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 gotta solve this problem.
With that bug-eyed CGI mummy has all the majestic dark malevolence of Fozzie Bear, right? uh, yeah, there's nothing scary there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this is a particularly scary film. I don't hate it for that because I'm
Oh,
not. Going into this, I was not anticipating, like when I was young, I didn't anticipate this to be a scary movie. And a movie with elements of scare, but even when it is scary, it always pulls back enough. It always like makes something funny about the scare, or yeah, there's a quip waiting to be said somewhere.
and
And
two things
I
on that, I think. Oh, sorry.
go no 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 please go ahead.
I think one, which yeah, that's very much what it was going for, and I do think that is also a characteristic of Stephen Sommers' directorial approach, where he clearly has a deep love of classic monsters, but doesn't seem to have either the desire, the skill, or the trust in the latter to commit to like he's always got to undercut it so that oh yeah no
Yeah.
it's not really serious, right? And then I mean we wind up with things like Van Helsing and
Hey hey
even
hey hey! You be
I
careful.
mean and Deep Rising, which I remember going to see that and like really loving the monster, but then just the absolutely grating in scare quotes comic relief of Kevin J. O'Connor, the razor blade in your peanut butter sandwich, was so off-putting. But I think your point too about the expectations is one. So your experience of the Mummy, your first encounters of it, was completely different from mine. I saw it opening week in the theaters, and that film was not advertised as a, a humorous adventure romp. It was advertised as a horror movie. The
Oh.
poster, big scary face over the pyramids. The tagline
Mm-hmm.
is "The sands will rise, the
Yeah.
heavens will part, the power will be unleashed." And of course, going in with the deep love I had for the 32 film, I mean, my experience was totally Krusty the Clown's watching Worker and Parasite. Just like what the hell was that?
I can see how if you went in with that horror expectation, it would be a big surprise and possibly a big disappointment. Yeah. Yeah, Juan
Yeah,
Miguel
and
says
so
it looks like an Indiana Jones film, and I think that's pretty valid, actually. Yeah.
yeah. In fact,
That's what it's
there
criticized
that
for too.
became my other issue with it. Is it just felt like an Indiana Jones wannabe or Indiana Jones light, right? It was going through all the motions of Indiana Jones without any of the stakes, and because hardly anything matters. But all we can come back to that.
I don't agree that it has no stakes. The stakes seem pretty significant to me. The world's gonna end.
But nobody believes like when we get like one of the scenes that really stands out for me as being emblematic of this issue is when the plagues arrive, right? Or the abridged version of the 10 plagues of Egypt. We're not going to have the killing of the firstborn in a family movie outside of the 10 commandments, but when we get the plague of fire, okay, that is a spectacular moment. Like the sky is on fire, there's meteors landing, Cairo is being obliterated, and our characters react with let's go indoors. And the moment that the plague is removed from the frame, it's as if it never happened. And then we cut to blue sky and just let's have some shenanigans back in the library again. It's as if none of that ever happened, right? Each plague is a brief special effect, and then none of it ever happened. None of it mattered, right?
It's
So that's
also
what I mean by
just really weird and jarring to have suddenly plagues, which I associate with Moses and
well,
Jewishness, and have nothing to do with what Imhotep, a priest of the old Egyptian gods, would be involved in or thinking about. It's just, where did this come from? Why is this?
Yeah. It seems like a very bad curse they used on him too, since it's got this built-in. It's like,
Power up
if
for
this
him?
ever
Yes.
backfires, it's going to come back as an omnipotent god.
Yeah. Poor planning.
Although not fully. His so like a huge little detail that I definitely noticed more in this rewatch is there's like a moment when they're in the city when the plague starts showing up, and O'Connell basically says, he's here, and the implication being that we know that he's like powering his little body up to be like mega Egyptian asshole. Because that's essentially what he's going to become. Because why he's an asshole to everybody else is not quite clear, but whatever. But the way it makes it seem is that at each stage he's getting more and more powerful, but his power is not extending much past like basically his general region. He's basically like a superhero, and I don't know, maybe he's going to become a god monster, but only because he's technically immortal, I guess.
He
But
somehow
it's not
yanks the moon
clear.
out of orbit.
Well, I mean, he just causes an eclipse. I mean, that could just been incidental. It's true. Trish, you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but you know what? Everybody's committing a fallacy. They're assuming the two things are linked together, and they don't actually know that's the case. They just went, oh, really bad things are happening. Oh my gosh, there's an eclipse. Did anybody check the moon charts? They did not. I rest my case. If anything, for all you know, only 3 of the plagues actually, right? The fire one, maybe, technically, or it could just be like a really bad meteor shower. I mean, I guess we'd have to give Imhotep the whole, like, all the, like, scotch in the world turns to blood. That one we probably got to get, because there's probably not a logical reason for that one. And I guess reading from the book and then Locust immediately follow, we probably have to give that one too. But the fire from the sky, maybe it could be natural, and the moon, I'm just saying.
It's just he's just a very good con artist. Then
Well, maybe he is. I don't know. But, I mean, everybody's afraid of him. They don't want him to come back. They do not want him to get to his full form. They do not want him getting his girlfriend back. I feel like he's kind of misunderstood.
you see what I mean about the all of those things happen, and then 2 seconds later, it's as if they didn't happen, right? When you think about how many thousands of people must have died in Cairo, based on what we're seeing between the meteor swarm and the boil zombie plague, and then, but again, as soon as all of those things leave the frame, then it's as if it never happened. And so by the end, we have Ardith Bey saying, "You have earned the respect of our people." Bracket, despite the fact you did the stuff that killed thousands of them. Uh, but since a lot of these characters, basically anybody in this film who isn't white is eminently disposable as far as the narrative is concerned. Everything's fine.
That is true. You're not wrong there.
I wouldn't say Ardith Bey
respect.
was disposable. I mean, he was really super
Yeah,
hot.
except, well,
and the original script had him dying at the end, but the director said, "We can't kill this guy off. He's too pretty."
Oh, you mean Oded Fair?
the Egyptian
Yeah.
played by an Israeli.
Hey. He could have been. You never know. I don't know. I mean, okay. So if you're really digging into this movie, you're trying to think of it as a piece of any level of historicity.
Oh, no.
You're going to be sorely disappointed.
Do not do that.
Oh no, it's not going to
No.
be that. No.
Please,
No,
no.
it
And
is
you
a
wouldn't
thing.
and you'd be and that would be going to Cleopatra for the snake, right? It's
Yeah.
and any mummy film, you're not going to get that.
I think it's interesting because while there is an enormous amount of effort put into sets on this film, the sets are quite gorgeous, and even the special effects
that's
shots,
true.
especially at the beginning, are really quite good. I watched a mini documentary on how they did the like early pyramid scene at the beginning, and it's really impressive for 1999. And then you watch it now, and it's still really impressive for 1999. But overall, like the set design, a lot of effort has gone into it to like actually insert like imagery that we would associate with ancient Egypt. But like that does seem to be the level they went to. As they went, well, that's ancient Egyptian. What does it mean? It could mean penis for all we know, but we're not going to check. And so there's like a couple of academic articles that are just about like looking at the mummy like Egyptology craze in film, and then this film
Mm,
gets like a lot of effort because, for example, Imhotep is an actual figure in ancient Egypt. He is not a priest who was under Seti the first. Like that's not,
Oh
he's not
yeah,
associated with him at
they
all.
mix up
He's associated
eras
with
all over the place.
all completely,
Mhm.
right? And so you would, as David, you're correctly noting, be making a mistake to be coming to this expecting historicity, and to some degree, the film gives the illusion that it is being historic, but never actually outright tells us this is true history. Unlike films that will tell you, like this is like this is based on true events, or this is like an interpretation of true events, or like things of this may actually be true. This film is just like, yeah, here's our interpretation of like a story that could involve all of this stuff, and then we're just gonna have fun. Which again, maybe is an issue of when people go to this film expecting it to be historic. In the
don't
same
think
way, David,
anyone
you were
would.
talking earlier about expectations. I don't think anybody actually did, but
No, I don't
somebody
think.
did because they're grumpy.
I mean, I know that, and I wasn't the only one. We went to go to a movie called The Mummy. You're expecting a horror movie, right? Because that would have
Yeah,
always been the case up to that point, and it's like, oh, it's that. Okay, well, I mean, I think, like I said, again, for me, it doesn't work as an Indiana Jones movie either. For me, it's a like a weird stew of some of the elements of a 32 film, really just the names, and not much more than that. But with all the pathos removed, and with the stakes removed from Indiana Jones. Now it does share Indiana Jones's pace, and the what Trish mentioned, the really unfortunate exoticism, or flat out
yeah.
racism. Like, oh, which is the character that we keep being told smells bad and eats weird food?
It is the Arabic character played by Omid Jalili, who is actually quite funny, by the way. Not just in this film, but in general, he's actually quite funny.
Yep. Going to
He's
also
Iranian, by the way.
Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about. Speaking of Indiana Jones, I wanted to talk about ethics in archaeology. Uh, the 1932 movie and the 1959 movie both feature Egyptian characters lecturing the British archaeologists on, you come to our country, you open sealed graves that were supposed to be sacred places forever, you carry off our artifacts and our actual human beings who were mummified off to Britain. And this is bad. And do you ever think about how bad that is? And in both of those movies, the archaeologists say, basically, that's my job. I'm an archaeologist. And don't really defend the ethics of it at all. In
Yeah.
1999, I don't think this discussion occurs at all, except for Ardith Bay saying, you're disturbing things that you know nothing about, which is a rather different argument against people, artifact hunters. We won't even dignify them as archaeologists.
And we end the film
Yeah.
seeing our heroes head off into the sunset with a bunch of looted goods,
Yes.
and begin with one of our heroes fooling around with a corpse.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course,
Yes.
in the sequel, The Mummy Returns, obviously they've bought themselves a very nice British estate with that loot. It did not
Yes.
go to a museum. Unless they sold it
Well,
to a
though it
museum.
is apparent that they kept a lot of it in their house.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, these people don't even really have the excuse of being scientists. They're just treasure hunters.
The
Yeah,
32
and I
film
guess-
certainly gives us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Sean.
no, go ahead, David. Fine.
The 32 film certainly gives us a very idealized view of the British Museum, right? Saying, no, our route is not plunder, it's science. And it's like, well, yeah, historically your record was otherwise, but it does at least it raised that issue. And so interestingly, like we very explicitly find out that all of the stuff that is discovered, it all winds up in the Cairo Museum. It's not being shipped over to England. Which is and that's something that the previous mummy films would return to over and over again, right? There's constantly this sense of, you guys have it coming. because you did that in The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, one of the other Hammer films. The stuff is taken by an American, basically circus promoter, and yeah, that doesn't go very well.
Right. Well, the genuine original artifact hunters, pre archaeology, did some really horrible, horrible, horrible things to Egyptian artifacts and mummies. They would have straight out mummy unwrapping parties in Britain, and you'd invite all your rich friends to come see this poor desiccated corpse get unwrapped, and let's see if they had any amulets or whatever wrapped up in the wrappings. And, just horrible, sickening stuff that you read about, let alone hearing about mummy pigments that you would make paint that would have a particular shade of brown if you ground up mummies into it. Human beings. But it's desecration. Whatever, whether you believe in the religion or not, it's desecration to take a dried up body and grind it up for your paints.
Yeah, the ethics are really not of concern in this film. It is a swashbuckling type adventure where, like O'Connell's whole charm is like his rugged Americanism, and he knows things that Evelyn knows because he's a treasure hunter. He says this at one point where they're having the conversation about like the history or whatever, but their interests in the treasure are completely different. His interest is obviously personal gain because he wants to get the stuff and he wants to make money, which it's pretty obvious right from the beginning, because that's why they're there. They marched across to go to Hamunaptra in order to find what they believe mythically that there's treasure there. And like Hamunaptra is like a mythical city that only shows at certain times of the day or whatever. I don't know how exactly that works, but whatever. Doesn't matter.
Like Avalon.
Yeah, it's like Avalon. Yeah. For Evelyn, though, her desire is like she feels this deep connection to Egypt through her parents, and she seems like she's interested in knowledge. She wants to collect knowledge. In this case, she maybe doesn't think about the other kinds of ethical implications, which is, if some of the things that you think you read in books turn out to be true, you just start reading from books you don't know anything about. Maybe you accidentally
thousands of people die.
Yeah, no big deal. But, there is this like really delightful charm to each of them that is still there in the film, but becomes problematic in the same way when we talk like Indiana Jones and all of these kinds of figures. Once you start thinking about the implications of the actions they're taking, Evelyn's only main thing seems to be that she's rooted in Cairo. O'Connor's thing is like O'Connell, he just wants money. He just wants to make a living. Like, that's all he's really, at least initially, only interested in. And then he met Evelyn and realized he was really interested in librarians all along. Which, fair enough, if your librarian is Rachel Weisz, I don't know what to tell you, but,
You'll note that their meet cute was a non-consensual kiss.
Speaking of non-consensual kisses, I want to talk about female agency in these movies.
Oh,
yes,
please. Yeah.
All right, so in 1999, we have Rachel Weisz, who starts out as a librarian, but when offered the chance for opportunity, she's not afraid to go riding on camels and going off on adventures with her brother and strange men, and it is very fun seeing her go through her adventures, and she makes some mistakes, but she also comes up with some good ideas, and she makes a really scary bargain to go with Imhotep in order to, she bargains, okay, I'll go with you if you'll leave my brother and Rick and all these other people alone. Imhotep doesn't keep his side of the bargain, but it's a brave sacrifice on her part. And then later, when that turns out, he was doing that in bad faith, she starts fighting him again. And does she read the spell that, at least helps to incapacitate him to the point where the others can take him down? So she's a lot of fun in this movie. In 1959 movie, which I had seen a long time ago, or at least parts of, and rewatched, there is a woman. She's the wife of Peter Cushing, archaeologist, and she has an uncanny resemblance to Aknanka, and she is able several times to stop the Boris Karloff mummy from doing. To stop Christopher Lee mummy from doing what he's doing, just by saying stop or don't or whatever. But it's also extremely annoying that Peter Cushing tells her when he's being threatened that the best thing she can do is go lock herself in her room upstairs and not participate in this whole thing at all. Eventually, when confronted by the mummy, she faints, and she's being dragged off to the swamp by him, and the men's come and rescue her. So, really don't love 1959, but boy, I was pleasantly surprised, so thrilled that I actually cheered during the 1932 movie. What we have there is that a girl in Cairo whose father is off in some other country doing British adventuring stuff. She is at a party, and the mummy priest there is reading an invocation to awaken his priestess love. And so at this party, she goes into a trance. She goes to the museum. She tries to get into the museum where the ritual is being done. 2 archaeologists find her there and take her to their house. And eventually she wakes up from the trance in a library, in a strange house, being told by some guy that she's, been acting weird, and they brought her here. And you love you, you have to love me back. And she tries to laugh it off nervously. She says, haha, let's talk about this later. And he rather terrifyingly says, don't laugh at me. And I was like, it was horrible. Oh. But then later in the movie, he continually ignores advice about, protecting himself. He, the young archaeologist who's in love with Helen. He keeps taking off an amulet that's supposed to protect him so that he can give it to her, who the mummy is not trying to hurt. And eventually the mummy there takes her to the museum to try to enact the ritual to infuse her with the spirit of his dead love. And the men try to save her, but the mummy does some spell that freezes them, and they can't act, but she actually appeals to Isis to save her. And Isis, the statue of Isis in the museum, lifts its amulet, and the scroll of life crumbles starts burning. So basically, in that movie, the girl saves herself, and it was such an awesome, awesome moment, and in a 1932 movie, and I was thrilled by how that went in that movie.
Well, it's interesting. You talk,
David.
No, I completely agree. And what you're saying about the male lead there, he's also part of a pattern. You look at almost any horror film from the 30s or 40s, and the romantic male lead will be completely useless. Sometimes worse than useless. He'll shoot the wrong person. But he's almost always incapable of actually making things better. Frequently played by David Manners, who was the male lead in The Mummy. Also, and we might add to that that one of the 2 Mummy films we're talking about actually has a POC in the title role, but not the 1999 film.
So the agency thing, Trish, I was thinking about it while watching this because I knew you had mentioned it in our little comments that this is something you wanted to talk about, and so I was paying close attention to how women in particular are positioned to this, and by women I mostly just mean the only 2 women that really matter in the film, which is Evelyn and then Anaxuna Moon, who arguably isn't really in this movie. I don't think she quite counts. But with Evelyn, one of the things I thought about is, from a structure perspective, the kind of movie we're shown is a movie where the woman would be the damsel in distress. And so much of the way she is, Evelyn in particular, set up in this film would give you the impression that's who she's going to become, because she is presented to us as clumsy. She maybe knows some things, but she isn't the type of person that comes across like archetypally as your adventuring lady, leading lady kind of figure. And that's, of course, O'Connell's perspective, too, because he's like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And of course, he's wrong throughout the film. She's actually quite adept at not just the knowledge. She maybe doesn't have the brawn, as it were, but she's got the brains and she's got the will. And she does get in a fight with Anaxuna Moon. In the second film, she actually gets to like do a Psy battle, which makes absolutely no sense historically, but sure, whatever. But I really appreciated that in this film, she doesn't just get reduced to damsel. Yes, she is kidnapped. Yes, she has to be rescued, but it's not rescued as in the hero comes in, he rescues her, he does all the work, and then she's just standing there and rescued. Even in the process of rescue, she's required for the rescue to even work, right? O'Connell is not the one who knows all the stuff, right? He's the one that he has to basically use his physique. He's a smart guy, but he doesn't have that innate knowledge. Jonathan has only part of the knowledge because he knows it, but he doesn't know it the way Evelyn knows it. He like knows the surface, like he did like the reading, but he didn't really spend, he didn't get his master's degree, right? And so in that moment, you have these three heroes, all of them meeting their potential in a very unique way. And in this case, placing a woman in a very significant role in a kind of film where, frankly, that probably wouldn't happen that often. And I thought that was really, really cool. And it made me love this film more. So take that, David.
I would come back to Trisha's point too, in that, like you said, she still has to be rescued. She doesn't rescue herself like the same character does in the 32 film. Yeah, I mean, but certainly she does have more agency there. I couldn't help but notice, though, in terms of like the sort of the comical clumsiness, right, that the characters have, that she is, of course, is put in the position of knocking herself out the first time she fires a rifle, whereas comic relief brother Jonathan is quite able to gun down all the disposable people while completely drunk out of his mind, right? So, I mean, I do take the point. I think the kind of progressive nature of Evelyn's character, we really have to sort of do it within very precise confines when we consider the much more active roles women had in adventure films going, well, at least as far back as 1914.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Bembridge scholars feel bad about themselves after this movie's over? Do they feel bad about those other films? No, but they definitely got called out in this one. I don't even know what Bembridge scholars are. But they definitely had a meeting and went, crap, man, she called us out. We haven't let a woman into the Bembridge Scholars in like 150 years. What are we doing? I don't even know if that's true. Are Bembridge Scholars even real? What is that?
Yeah, I'm only seeing Bembridge Scholars in reference to the movie The Mummy, so I think it's a made-up thing.
It's a coded version of Oxbridge.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay, so I don't know that I fully understood. Why don't you like this movie, David?
It wasn't the movie he wanted to see.
Well, that
Well, I
was
mean,
certainly
other than that, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's funny. I think in some ways, if they called the mummy Caris instead of Imhotep, and that this is basically a remake of the Mummy's Hand rather than the Mummy, some aspects that I wouldn't have minded as much. Seeing all of the pathos stripped out of the movie that it is nominally remaking, right? The tragic lovers turned into assassins. Anxanamon's death it's not a tragedy anymore. It's a getaway plan that went wrong. That was one side of it. I mean, certainly, I know that after I saw the Mummy, when I saw the Mummy Returns, I thought, okay, I know what this is going to be now, and didn't mind it as much. And there was a time when I felt a little more kindly disposed towards the first, but. I mean, I guess I do. I find it moderately entertaining, but I guess the ersatz Indiana Jones stuff. I think, I just find it. Stephen Sommers doesn't have anywhere near the kind of skill that Steven Spielberg does in staging action. We're talking about like the stakes of the supernatural events. If you can compare the climax of Raiders of the Lost Ark to any of the events that happen in the Mummy, where they don't exist beyond the edge of the frame, right? As soon as we cut away, it's as if they never, like I said, it's as if they never happened. There's certainly some very striking visual moments, right? Like I like the sandstorm head. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Then sadly undermined by Bernie saying, "Oh, I like the sandstorm head." That was pretty cool. It's like, oh, really? So
I thought that was funny.
yeah, well, I mean, I guess, again, I think O'Connor, as a humorous actor, he's very much a Marmite actor. It's going to work for you, or it almost emphatically is not. Uh, and
Oh man, I find him
he
hilarious.
yeah. So, like I said, Marmite. Yeah, it's. I guess I find that on its own terms, there's things that I just don't think it does very well. Some of the special effects are good. Some of them, in 1999 looked very ropey. The racism is, I say really pops. I mean, when in many ways it manages to be more racist than a film in 1932. It's like, oof, okay, well, not everyone can do that. Kudos. The battle at the beginning, when you realize, wait a minute, all of these people that they're slaughtering, that's the brotherhood that's supposed to be protecting, the world from Imhotep. Like that, these people that are slaughtered all the way through the film, and with gay abandon, that we're supposed to be laughing at their demises until we have Ardath Bey as the one, okay, but he's the one named character, so we're going to switch that around. And there's certain aspects of just coming back to Trisha's earlier point, the colonial narrative that this thing is, right, which I would expect, and just, okay, this is part of the game. If I were watching, say, a Tarzan film in 1936, but is harder to take in 1999, especially when it seems to be going backwards on a number of these fronts. So in fact, there's some of these things that have come to bother me more over time
Hmm.
than they did and in the past. I mean, again, I'm feeling very much like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas here.
You are.
I know that for many people this is an absolutely beloved film, and though I have been, basically completely immune to its charms, I see that, Rick and Evelyn mean a lot to a lot of people. It's just it's a film that just keeps poking me in the eye every time I watch it.
I mean, some of us wanted Rick O'Connell to be our dad, so just saying. I mean, I can understand why you take the issues that you do. I guess this is a almost like a tonal thing that we almost are forced to agree to disagree, because I don't know that we could ever get to a point where we could not that we would, but like you could force the other to agree with how they feel about
Oh,
a
and I
movie when
certainly
they
do. Yeah,
watch it.
I would,
Yeah,
especially, like, I would never ever want someone who loves a movie to stop loving a movie.
right.
I would
Yeah.
hate that, right? So I hope that everybody who hears the sound of my voice who really loves the movie ignores absolutely every fucking thing I say.
Well, and of course, I don't want to give the impression that that is in no way what you're doing. I think
I really
for
don't
me,
know.
like
I don't want that. I don't want that.
no, that is not what you're doing at all. I said that in the sense that we basically hit this point where there's a subjective experience of a film that
Hmm.
there no degree of argument and attempt to make film experience objective can get each of us to each other's. We can understand it, but we can't actually. The experience can never we could never like cross the lines. And so you maybe are somewhat immune in the way that Benny is in this movie to the plagues, as it were, to make a connection. You are somewhat immune to the charms of this movie, whereas when I watch it, it is like it's oozing with charm for me. Almost every moment on screen that I'm just so locked in. I can't
Yeah.
unmoor myself from it. It is I don't know how to. There's just it like hits me on like a if there's some sort of primal level of in your like film watching experience, that's where it hits for me. And I'm sure you understand what I mean because you have
Completely,
had that with a
completely.
film. Yeah.
Also, I think this is absolutely anecdotal, right? But and I know some exceptions too. But my feeling is that the other people like me who dislike this film are probably closer to my age. We saw this movie in our 30s. and whereas you saw it much younger, right? And just like I forget, a friend of mine who quoted someone saying that the golden age of comics is 12.
Mhm.
When how old are you when you hit this film? I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be at that particular at a young age too. I mean, I totally get what you mean. Like there are films that they're it's visual meatloaf, right? It's absolute comfort food. Like what you were describing, the way you feel when you watch that. That's the way I feel when I watch Shriek of the Mutilated, and it's you it just and there's no necessarily logical reason, especially in the example I just gave, which I is in no way as good a film as this. I will never try to argue that Shriek of the Mutilated
Yeah.
is in any way, it's only borderline competent some of the time. But yeah, the subjective experience of art is going to be that, right? And so you find the stuff that you love, then you're going to love it, and that's great.
This is one for me. This is my meatloaf, as you say. I mean, I do genuinely love the film. I can see some of the criticisms of it, and I can even agree with some of the criticism in the same way that with Independence Day. But both of those films are, I don't know. There's something. Maybe it's just like '90s film because that's when I'm mostly in my like 10 to 18 era. Is basically
Yeah,
that era,
yeah.
and so many films just like left a mark. We've talked about some of them on this very podcast, like Jurassic Park, which like it's for me it's almost like the scary movie because it's the one that
Mm.
scared me so much we had to leave the movie theater when I was a kid, and I loved dinosaurs as a kid. Understanding dinosaurs would eat you, like so there is something about maybe that era of film that I just can't be objective about, and also I kind of don't care
Yeah,
because I
well, no, and
just
nor should you. I mean, I think the era that we first really see films, right? The movies that we see when we're really young that is shaping us as film viewers are going to mark us forever. Right?
Mhm.
And you're going to love them forever, even if as an adult, okay, I know this isn't very good, doesn't matter, I'm going to watch it again, right? Because it takes you back, it speaks to you so deeply, and that's absolutely wonderful. That's one of the wonderful things about films and how they can comfort us and embrace us no matter what that film is. And but it is part of our personal DNA.
yeah, I agree. Okay, so we have done a suffering to David twice now. I made him watch Independence Day mostly so I could get a very young millennial slash very old Gen Z on the show to talk about Independence Day because she'd never seen it, Becca. And then Trish wanted to be here because Trish obviously loves The Mummy as much as I do, and we'll be rewatching it tonight before bed. But David now gets to choose the next two films for Totally Pretentious. You do not have to choose both of them at this moment, David.
Okay.
But what is the next movie we are going to watch that you are going to essentially punish me with?
Well, I thought long and hard about your sentence. I thought, should it be Necromantic 2? I thought, should it be Cannibal Holocaust? Should it be
Well,
the
I can't
seven
do that
plus?
one.
No, nor can I. Should it be the 7+ hours of Satan Tango? But instead, you're getting off easy. You're going. We're going to do a film that has long been a favorite of mine, but that for much of my life I thought, well, in fact, was an example of what we were just talking about. This isn't very good. It's actually kind of silly, but I love it anyway. But that I have come in recent years to think, wait a minute, this is actually a much, much smarter movie than I was giving it credit for.
Mhm.
And that is the 1977 film The Car.
I've seen this movie.
James Brolin.
Oh no, I've seen Duel. Never mind.
So this is sort of like Christine before Christine.
Before there was Christine. I mean, yeah, Jewel is the apex of this kind of thing. The universally acclaimed classic. The Car is the underdog in here, but it does have one of the single greatest car stunts ever.
Ooh.
I'll leave you to discover that.
Okay, I'm excited. Well, cool. We're gonna watch that then. Okay, so we've done a show. It has been an adventure, to say the least.
Against all
because
odds.
nothing worked. Yeah, no kidding.
Told you we
Nothing
were on the wrong side of the river.
We were, in fact, on the wrong side of the river. Apparently going on Twitch was a nightmare tonight. So, for folks at home, if you have thoughts about The Mummy 1999, or you want to send us thoughts before we get to the car, which is probably going to be a little bit before we can get to the car. I'm not sure exactly when that will happen, but that is the next one. You can send us notes at skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. We also have a listener suggestion form at skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions. We have a newsletter. We've got all the socials. We're on Skiffy and Fanty basically everywhere except Shitter. And so you can go to our linktree, linktr.ee/skiffyandfanty to find all that stuff. Please join the Patreon, especially because at this point, if this keeps happening, we may end up doing more shows on the Patreon Discord because I don't know what to do when Twitch doesn't work. So we'll see what happens. I'm various places. Just find me linktree/Sean Duke.
You can find me on Facebook and on Mastodon at david.annandale at social.horrorhub.club and on my website at davidannandale.com.
You can find me, Trish Matson, on Blue Sky, at PE Matson, on Mastodon, at newsy.social, at TrishEM, and on my blog at whatsthewordnow.blogspot.com. I also just want to give a real quick comp. If you can't watch a movie right now, but you're in the mood to read something that gives you some of the same feels as The Mummy 1999, I recommend the book Mr. Impossible by Loretta Chase. It does not have mummies coming to life, but it does have a beautiful, brilliant Egyptologist, well, hand-wavy Egyptologist, and she's trying to save her brother, and there's also a big, dumb, hunky man who helps her, and it's just delightfully frothy and fun.
Cool. All right, as is required by the Skiffy and Fanty bylaws, I have to make this awkward, and so I will just remind David that you may not remember this, but once we were at a convention, and I had to stop you from buying a bootleg DVD because it might have inadvertently released a pestilence upon the convention space. And you fought with me over it, but in the end I turned out to be right. And so remember, don't touch it if it's buzzing.
Got it by mail the following week.
Fuck, David! Ah! And on that note, awkward ending and scene.
Good night, folks.
If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.